earlier in the game, he had above his eye. The same guy threw him the boards.
Good evening. The hour of 6 p.m. having arrived, I will call to order this regular meeting of the Planning Licenses and Development Committee. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and channel 1302. The video is also streamed on the city's website and is posted on the website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Copies of the printed agenda are available in the wall pockets as you entered the meeting room. The public and other city councilors will be recognized to ask questions and comment on the agenda items under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. I will not recognize an individual a second time until everyone who wishes has had a chance to speak. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room and identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. Written comments from the public will be accepted at the clerk's office until Tuesday at 1 p.m. I will now call to order this regular meeting of the Planning Licenses and Development Committee and declare a quorum present. The minute taker is participating remotely this evening, so committee members, please be sure to turn on your microphones when speaking. If the minute taker is unable to hear, they will ask you to speak louder or turn your microphone on. Finally, I understand that a more time item from the Keene Young Professionals for a license for the food festival is ready to be considered this evening, and we'll take that up at the end of the agenda tonight. So welcome, everyone. We are going to jump right in tonight with our very first item, which is the Farmers Market of Keene's request to use city property. Do we have, is Bruce Bickford with us yet? No, I don't see him. Court, are you going to come forward for the city?
Good evening, Corporal Blomquist, Assistant City Manager, Public Works Director, and Emergency Management Director. Yes, I drew the short straw this afternoon. We do have, this is the Farmers Market came in with their request for their license to hold their weekly market. This year they're going down to 1 day, I believe. According to their note, they are looking for their standard 22 spaces, 11 up on Gilboa Avenue, 11 within Commercial Street parking lot, and I believe they're also requesting the same level of fee for the spaces that they wish to utilize for that particular time. So we're unaware of any changes other than the elimination of the Tuesday market day.
I recall that they did that last year as well. Okay.
I think they had asked for it, and they may not, and then I think they only did it a couple times, and they ended up not doing it for the majority of the season. But
Okay,
I
so
think
this
last
year
They
they're,
did still ask for the 2 days, but I think they ended up not utilizing the Tuesday for for the majority of the season.
okay. All right, thank you. Yes, Counselor Jones.
Court, I think it was during COVID that they moved out to Gilboa Avenue, and they just found they liked it better, being on that frontage there. Has that affected the city, or
Well,
are we
they've been
good with that too?
Well, they've been on Gilboa Avenue in the commercial lot for quite some time.
Yeah, but they used to be in the just a commercial lot,
Well-
and during COVID, they asked to be outside more.
Well, they actually moved up to the Gilboa Avenue, that northern section
Yes.
before COVID. They found that being within the Commercial Street lot, because they were occupying both sides of, I think of the Commercial Street lot, they were at one time occupying both sides of the center island. But then they felt that being closer to the bike path was more effective for them, because they could be on the Gilboa Avenue side, and on the Commercial Street side, they would phase out to the multi-use trail there. So they did that again. They were doing that before COVID.
Oh, okay, so the city's fine with it, there's no
Oh,
negative
no,
effects
it's
on
like
the
I said,
city?
it's no changes. They're, again, they're using a few less spaces than they did when they were further in the lot, but again, that goes back 8 years or so, when they made that change.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for Court while we have him? All right, I'm not seeing any.
Bruce has arrived, if you want to hear from Bruce.
I was wondering, Bruce, do you want to take a seat?
Sure.
Up at the front?
Sure.
so we started speaking about your request to city property. Court gave us a brief overview of the request as he understood it and how things were last year versus this year. Do you want to add anything?
No, we were just requesting this, basically stay the same way
Okay.
that we have been. Just a Saturday instead of, I think, last year we did away with the Tuesday.
Yep.
So this year would just be the same as last year.
Okay.
Yep.
I think that sounds good. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Bickford? All right, I'm not seeing any right now. So I would open it up to the public. Does the public have any questions about this item? All right, seeing none, I would ask for a motion. Counselor Johnson. Can you please turn on your microphone before you start?
And it's this first motion.
Yep. First page. Yep, it starts right there.
All right, thank you. I move to recommend that the Farmers Market of Keene be granted permission to use 22 spaces along Gilbo Avenue and 18 spaces on the other side of the medium strip in the Commercial Street parking lot from Saturday, April 22nd, 2023 to Saturday, October 28, 2023. Said permission is subject to the following conditions: the furnishing of a certificate of liability insurance in the amount of $1 million, naming the city of Keene as an additional insured, the signing of a standard revocable license and indemnification agreement set by the city staff. Further, per section 94, what did I do wrong?
You skipped a page.
Oh, boy, I did a good job there. Beg your pardon, ladies and gentlemen.
That's okay.
The receipt of a total rental fee of $932 payable on the first day of every month at $155 per month. Access to city electricals shall also be provided at a fee of $60 for the season. Obtainment of all necessary permits and licenses and compliance with all laws and compliance with any recommendations of city staff. It is further recommended that the Farmers Market of Keene be allowed to erect sandwich board signs on city property prior to the start of sales, subject to review and approval by city staff with respect to the number and location. The signs must be removed immediately after the sales have concluded.
Second.
I have a motion by Counselor Johnson, second by Counselor Jones. Does anyone, so Counselor, I think you got the longest motion today.
That's all right, I just got
I
my
hope
pages
everyone-
mixed up.
I hope everyone was listening. Does anyone have any questions about any of those items in that motion? Counselor Jones.
Just as Gladys was reading, I noticed the opening date is April 22nd. That's also green cleanup day. So I think, actually kind of fits well, I think.
Right, yeah, the last few years.
So we look
we've-
forward to having you that day.
Yeah, no, with the last few years, we actually, I don't know, it's been 3, 4, 5 years maybe that we've actually started 2 weeks earlier than we used to. Yep,
That'll actually help you, I think,
Yeah.
bring more business down to you.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great collaboration.
Yeah.
Anyone from the public have any questions on that? All right, seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous. Welcome back.
Hey, thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right, so our next item is a memorandum of understanding with the Civil Air Patrol. And we have, I'm sorry, can you give me your name again, sir?
Absolutely. Hang on, just get myself situated. My name is Carey Heckman, Careyheckman, and my home address is 7 Choate Road, Choate, in Hanover, New Hampshire.
Great.
And I serve as the New Hampshire Director of Communications for the Civil Air Patrol.
Wonderful. And can you tell us a little bit about the request for this?
My pleasure. So Civil Air Patrol has 5 repeaters throughout the state, one of which is near here, up high, and it provides us a range of about 20 or 30 miles for communications, which we use to coordinate our ground teams, also our aircraft, when they're up doing search and rescue missions. As you may know, Civil Air Patrol does about 80-some% of all the search and rescue missions in the United States. So Air Patrol is a part of the total force of the United States Air Force. So that's one of the things they direct us to do, and they fund us to conduct search and rescue, but also for disaster relief. So on those times when, for example, the Connecticut River decides to flood, which if things keep going the way they are, we might be back in that situation again, they ask Civil Air Patrol to fly missions to provide aerial reconnaissance and show where the flooding is. And in order to do that and keep it safe, we need to coordinate the aircraft. We use communications to do that. These repeaters are part of our communications network for doing that thing. We also do fire patrol for the state, and there oftentimes there's a need to use the repeaters for the aircraft to communicate with the state fire people on the ground to locate where the fire is and do what they do. So that's great, but the problem is our repeaters, in order to use the repeater, the coordination, people have to be within that range of the repeater. Our state incident command post is in Concord, not within the range of that repeater. So a technology that has come about that we use is to install a radio near the repeater, and it's connected by the internet, so we can then access the repeater from actually anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, if there's an internet connection. So I could be sitting at home, and I could actually be coordinating the aircraft through the repeater here in Keene by using the internet to get me to this radio. The airport has been kind enough to allow us, or at least to start the process. You're going to eventually allow us, but to at least start the process of allowing us to install this radio in the existing squadron office at the airport, which is within range of our repeater. So that works out pretty conveniently. So that's the memorandum of understanding is really quite a simple document. Mostly it's for the protection, about 90% protection, 95% protection of the city, to say in particular, if something were to go wrong, you can pull the plug. We understand that. Also, you can get rid of us with a reasonable amount of notice. We'll come and cart everything away. Civil Air Patrol is paying for everything, so we will pay for all the equipment and the installation. And I'm trying to think of anything else that's relevant, but I think that's probably about it. I'm open to any questions, though.
Well, that's great. I think that's really good information for us all to have and understand the usefulness of this tool and how it connects to keep our community safe. I think it's great to have the resource in the area. Do we have any questions from the committee? Councilor Jones?
Thank you, and thank you for coming. I think this is something good. I was actually lobbied on this by Ray Harvey.
I actually got an email this morning from Ray down in Florida, following up on me saying, "You're going to go, aren't you?" I said,
Yeah.
"Yes, sir, I will go." He gives me all my orders.
I sent him a message last night that it was coming, yeah.
Thank you. He's a good man.
Yeah, he is.
We miss him, but he's one of those bird people that fly down there for the winter.
He's got grandkids down there, yeah.
So,
But he lives across the street from me, so.
very good.
This is very good. Good for the community, good for the airport, good for the country.
I think so, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Ormerod?
Yes, asking for a couple of clarifications. One, you're installing a repeater at the airport? Is
No,
that
sir,
correct?
just a radio.
Oh, just a radio?
It's
Okay.
on one channel, and that's the channel that talks to the repeater. So it just provides a way of us linking the repeater into the internet.
Okay, that's great. And second, it's coming to PLD for a reason. So through the chair, I'd like to ask Rebecca if there's anything we have to consider for this in terms of, any of our regulations.
Well, our airport director.
Thank you.
Better. Our airport director is here tonight if there are any such regulations, according to city code, but I'm sure that has already been accommodated. Dave, do you want to speak to that as to whether or not there are any requirements?
Hi, Katja, I'm sorry, I struggle with some laryngitis, but Dave Hickling, Airport Director. Yeah, we looked through the memorandum of understanding. The city attorney looked through it. We don't see anything that would be any problem with any of the regulations. There was some thoughts of whether it would interfere with other radio traffic, but it says in there that if it is, they'll remove it, so that wouldn't be an issue.
We already have this installed in 3 locations, and so far, have not had any problem whatsoever.
Okay.
Great. And I think tonight the council committees need to give the manager authority to do the negotiations. I think that's what they're looking for from us this evening. Any other questions? Okay.
Just for clarification on that question, because this is a use of city property and it sort of looks like a license, and we may have come to you with a license, but because it's the Civil Air Patrol, because we've had this relationship with them in other areas in the past, and the MOU sort of takes the place of the license, that's why it's in front of PLD this evening.
Great, thank you for that clarification.
And if you also clarifying on the motion, and I apologize, I didn't pick this up on all the other things today. I still would like it, have it say necessary to negotiate and execute, if you don't mind.
Necessary to negotiate and
Yeah,
execute, okay.
to negotiate and execute.
All right, and do we have anyone from the public who has any questions at this time? All right, I'm not seeing any. So I would be open for a
You
motion.
doing?
Mhm.
I would move for the PLD to recommend to the full city council, to recommend that the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to negotiate and execute a memorandum of understanding with the Civil Air Patrol to install communications equipment at the airport terminal building.
Second.
I have a motion by Counselor Jones, second by Counselor Ormerod. Does anyone have any questions on that motion? Anyone from the public?
clear.
Okay, seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous. With this process, we'll keep moving forward, guys.
Awesome. For the record, if I just say thank you very much for your time and for your support and your kind words about Civil Air Patrol, but really appreciate the partnership we have with the city of Keene. It means a lot to us, so thank you very much, and I hope we always do things that earn your respect and cause you to feel good about your partnership with us.
Great, well, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, next item is the use of city property, the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services installation of a bedrock monitoring well, and it looks like we have Andy Bohannon here tonight.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. Andy Bohannon, Parks Recreation Facilities Director, and Public Works Director Court Blomquist and I had arranged this. I was away on vacation when this needed to be submitted, so that's why his name is on this. But he and I had had a conversation with the gentleman from Michael Howley, who's a geoscience program specialist from the Geological Survey, which is a division of the Department of Environmental Services, related to potentially having a water monitoring station here in Keene, which was up off of the old Gilsum Road. And at first conversation related to, you know, how proximity was it to the trails, to the housing, and this was a particular location that they had selected based on its proximity to everything else, and how the western part of New Hampshire is very underserved for this monitoring, and which is really a critical point for the state to keep an eye on and monitor all of these water systems. So related specifically to drought and the elevations of long-term effects. So with that, Court and I definitely felt that it was in a adequate place and looking at what they had anticipated. So the motion in front of you tonight is basically twofold. One, to look at have the city manager be authorized to negotiate and execute a license with them. And then the second is because we're going up the old Gilsum Road with equipment that requires council action. So that is also part of the motion as well. But they're looking to get this taken care of over the course of the summer.
Great, well, thank you for all the background. And it's my understanding that this benefits our community as a whole because we'll have a data point that's really close by that we can look at that data and have real-time availability of what our current water situation is here. Is that correct?
That is correct. The closest one is in Greenfield, and it's kind of overburdened. The next closest one that they're looking to install is Rindge, and outside of that, those are the two. Greenfield's the closest one at this time. So we're really kind of underserved in this area. So this will serve us, the greater community, very well.
Wonderful. Do we have any questions from the council? Councilor Ormerod?
Thank you. I'm really excited about this. I think this is great that we're getting one so close to us. My question is how deep does it really go, and what really is bedrock, and why is the bedrock monitoring as, you know, so important as opposed to any other monitoring like surface?
Yes, I can answer that question. It actually, sir, it's anticipated to be 400 feet deep, in the because they also chose it because it's in a conservation area. So the second part of your question again, Counselor, I'm sorry?
Oh, what is bedrock, and why is it important to monitor the bedrock level instead of the surface?
Mr. Blomquist?
We have our Public Works Director joining us.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Committee members, Corporal Lumbus, Public Works Director, Emergency Management Director. The reason that, again, reason it's a deep well, it's for groundwater monitoring. And in this particular area, in the state of New Hampshire, there are two primary groundwater aquifers. In this area, the aquifer that they're looking at is a deep aquifer. As you can imagine, it's the one that sort of moves towards the Connecticut River. And in this case, it is over 400 foot in depth, so that's why you're seeing it. Monitoring surface water really isn't from a perspective of how well the water, again, water sources, et cetera, the aquifers are being impacted. It's not it's not the best way to indicate what's happening. So this well will allow that monitoring of that fluctuation that occurs over time, how quickly it rebounds, say, from when we have a period of drought, particularly as we move forward, particularly with climate change, as we're seeing. In the last 4 years, we've been in 2 drought conditions, 2 severe drought conditions. One of the concerns is, particularly in this area, since we haven't had this kind of deep well monitoring, is how quickly that this particular aquifer is recovering from those kind of situations. So as Andy mentioned, this is over 400 feet, which is kind of typical for bedrock well in this region. If any of you, particularly if you know folks that live outside of Keene, up in the higher elevations, you talk to them, well, how deep their wells are. They are looking at between 250 to 400 foot in depth for bedrock, because how a bedrock well works, it's water that moves through cracks in the bedrock and accumulates at different points. But yeah, we're excited to be seeing this, and again, this is a long-term measurement, which I think will provide us better information, particularly when we talk about drought conditions.
Yes, Corp, don't go anywhere. Thank you for that question, and thank you for that answer. It was really helpful. Counselor
I'm
Jones?
geeky, I'm
He
sorry.
might have a follow-up.
I would say thank you.
Court, is this just measuring volume, height of the water, or is it also, is it monitoring for potability? Is it monitoring for pH? Is it monitoring for PFAS, anything like that?
Well, theoretically, it can, but the primary purpose of this is for the call it quantity of water in the aquifer. So you're measuring height.
Okay.
So as the aquifer, it's not really set up, or they're not planning on setting it up for doing water quality monitoring.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for the minute taker, I'd just like to say that Counselor Giacomo has joined us at the panel tonight. Oh, yes, Counselor Giacomo.
Thank you, Court. Sorry, I caught the tail end of that. We've had a lot of concerns in the past, Little Gilsum Road with traffic on it. How much is expected for the drilling equipment and
Well,
how
the
long?
drill will probably take, I don't know, probably between 3 to 5 days. So what you'll see is a drilling rig go in one time. They'll have typically a small pickup truck that will be parked for the crew that they'll use to come back and forth at the end of the day and in the morning over that same 5-day period. DES will probably have one of their Explorer-type vehicles that will go in with them, monitor them, and leave. Once the well's installed, DES will probably come a couple times a year. They generally have said they don't necessarily need to use a vehicle. They may just walk in on those visits, but we anticipate maybe once or twice a year they may need to go in with again, a suburban-type state vehicle.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any more questions? All right, anyone from the public? Seeing none, I would ask for a motion.
I'll take it. Okay. The Planning, Licensing, and Development Committee moves to recommend the city manager be authorized to negotiate and execute a license with the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, NHDES, for the installation and maintenance of a bedrock monitoring well on city-owned property, Section 102/001/000/000/000, located in the Greater Goose Pond Forest for the purpose of groundwater level monitoring, subject to the city's licensing, standard licensing conditions and other conditions set by staff. Further, per section 94-238 of the City Code of Ordinances, the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services is authorized to use motorized vehicles on the Class 6 portion of the old Gilsum Road for the installation, monitoring, maintenance of the bedrock monitoring well. Access shall be coordinated with city staff.
And I second it.
I have a motion by Counselor Ormerod, a second by Counselor Johnson. Any questions on any of the items in that motion? Anyone from the public? All right, seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and our regular agenda has one more item, ordinance O-2022-19-A, relating to amendments to the Land Development Code, and I believe we have Jesse Rounds with us this evening.
Good evening, committee. I'm happy to give as much detail as you want about this, but I'm going to go pretty quickly through the items just so there's time to discuss if we need to. O-2219A.
Jesse,
Sorry, go
before
ahead.
you get going, do you
Yep.
mind just giving your title for the
Sure.
minute taker?
Sorry, yes. Jesse Rounds, Community Development Director.
Great, thanks.
So O-2022-19A is an item that our department put together to try to address a number of issues that we saw crop up in the Land Development Code over the year and a half that we've been using this new agglomeration of a bunch of different documents that we'd used in the past. So just to go over those quickly, the first one was a change in Article 9 to clarify driveway standards when you have a shared driveway. There was a change in Article 11, again having to do with driveways, that just clarified language about access across surface waters. There was an exemption for one and two family homes if it was a lot of record. And then there were two changes in Article 13 having to do with telecommunications, just governing when we require people to submit a conditional use permit for us to review and understand that. We also had a proposed change to Article 15, Congregate Living and Social Services Conditional Use Permit, to add the possibility of a waiver. And then we had a number of changes to Article 25 that I won't go into detail, but basically explained the paths that various changes within the LDC needed to take through City Council, the Joint Committee, and Planning Board, and things like that to get approved and to change regulations. And then there was one last change in Article 9. Right now, there's a process by which an applicant can request a major reduction in parking requirements on their property. And that requires a special exception, and they have to right now meet all of the special exception criteria plus 2 parking-related special exception criteria. And those general special exception criteria have nothing to do with parking and are sort of more esoteric, I guess. And so we're asking to, in the case of this parking exception, just focus on the 2 parking-related exception criteria. And with that, happy to answer any questions about that or the process.
Anyone want to start off with questions? I guess that leaves me. So basically, this is not the first time that the members of this committee have heard about this. We reviewed it at joint committee. It's had a reading at full council. It's had a public hearing at full council. And at the joint committee meeting, the section on conditional use permit waivers showed there was some concern about that and the impact that that particular section might have on all of your housekeeping items. Because I think that in general, all of the rest of this grouping of things tend to be very benign clerical things that we've discovered as issues inside the land development code. But this does create sort of a change in what the spirit of that ordinance, which when it was originally wrote, actually has. So it was my suggestion at joint committee that these items get separated. I feel like the group, because of the type of subject that this is, where we were discussing the planning board and the PLD committee not equal in membership, we're discussing an item that affected the planning board. We weren't able to come to an agreement to separate them at that meeting. So I would hope that we can have a little bit of that discussion here tonight and see if the committee is still supporting that.
Great. Madam Chair, I do have a comment to make on that,
Okay.
especially given some prior conversations that we've had. The matter before you can either move it forward or you can send it back. Our recommendation is that after discussion by the committee, if you do want to send it back, you send the whole thing back. And not do a motion to sever it out. It's too hard to separate out the discussion and the issues that may have occurred back at the joint committee from what's happening now. So if you do decide as a committee to recommend that it be returned to the joint committee, the Community Development Director does have a proposed motion that would accomplish that.
Okay. So is it my understanding that staff would support that?
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Counselor Jones?
I'm hearing what the city attorney says, but unless we make an amendment or something, we're not giving direction to staff as to why we're sending it back.
No, your recommendation would be, the motion would be for you to recommend to the city council
Right.
that the ordinance be returned to the joint committee for further review and action, essentially.
Yes, but staff's not getting direction on this.
No. You are not giving us direction. You're recommending to the council that the ordinance go back.
All right, and then council could recommend that it go back,
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
but there's no direction.
No, right. Neither you.
They don't know what we want.
But that's the point. It's like the discussion that happened at the city council meeting last Thursday. This is a committee that you have created, joint committee, right? In the background notes, you can and now have this conversation and discuss why you would like to have it sent back. Those background notes will be available to the joint committee. But it wouldn't be proper for you or the city council to direct the joint committee, which is a standing or committee that the council created to make these recommendations. It wouldn't be appropriate to do that.
Understood.
That's why you have the joint committee.
Does that make sense?
So if we have an issue with just one part, we don't bring it up till it goes back to the joint committee?
You can discuss it now, and then, yes, when it goes back to the joint committee, then you can raise it again at that point.
Right. But I think having the discussion now is important, if you feel that that's something that you'd like to see happen. Counselor
getcha.
Giacomo?
Councilor Jones seems to still be a little confused or having more questions, and I want to make sure that you
I
are
might be clarifying.
comfortable.
Based on what Kate said, I got it now.
All right, good.
So, building off of that a little bit, though, what I'm seeing here is we're sending back the exact same thing that that the planning board unanimously voted against separating last time. So we're just gonna be going in circles here potentially, unless the planning board decides to either have a different makeup this month, or they decide to completely change their minds on this. And I think that's the guidance, whereas we would like to see these housekeeping items get accomplished. This other thing we think definitely requires more discussion not in favor of it as it's written right now, but I think the concern is that if we just send it right back again, we're expecting different results from the same people, with no change. So that's my concern with it as well, I think.
The problem, I think, from our perspective, and my perspective in particular, is severing it out of the ordinance, severing these two things out, is a material change to the ordinance. And generally, unless it's a Scrivener's error or something that's fairly minor in that sense, we would not ordinarily not send it back to the committee. You may come up with the same result. That's entirely true at this point. And then the city council is going to have to decide what to do with it when it comes back to the council.
So-
You can recommend adoption of it at this point, but I think that the sense is to send it back and at least for further discussion on it.
So I think that it's fair to say, and also for Counselor Jones, because he wasn't at that joint committee meeting, that I explained to the planning board what the potential for, what was at risk by sending it, letting it leave joint committee in its entirety and sending it to full council. There's a couple of things that can happen here. We can send it back and say, we explained to you that we weren't ready to accept this ordinance as a whole. Would you please rethink this? Or we can send it on, and there's a potential that it could be voted down at full council. In that scenario, the staff loses all of the housekeeping items and loses the ability to bring them back until 2024.
Without a suspension of the
Without a
rules, that
suspension
would
of the
be
rules.
correct.
So there is some, hopefully would be some interest in that the planning board would understand that we were serious about those comments and that it wasn't just rhetoric, that we would say, like, this is important to us. This is not something that we want to see put together. One of these items has potential for controversy and the others do not. And it is not fair to put all of those items at risk for the sake of trying to get a single item to piggyback through on the back of other items. So I would like to have an opportunity to explain that again to the joint committee.
And you will have that opportunity, and it will be important for everybody on that committee to understand just that nuance, that if you don't actually sever them out, and I think that community development will be there prepared to do exactly that and to make that recommendation to the committee, that it could put everything else off until 2024 without a suspension of the rules. And we'll be there prepared to explain all of that at this point. And being, putting it right on the table, your recommendation is a recommendation. The city council could say, we like the ordinance, we're going to pass it.
Also true, also true. So any other questions from the committee at the time? Counselor Jones?
So it sounds like at least you want something on record. So I like most of ordinance 2219-A. I'm opposed to the conditional use permit waiver for congregate living and social service conditional use.
That's,
That was the part I didn't like. I'm just getting that on the record, so when it goes to joint committee.
great. Counselor Ormerod?
Yes, I am also very concerned about the waiver, conditional use waiver, because you're bypassing a system that was set up with a legislative group, which is the planning board. They're serving as a legislative function, and the zoning board is the judicial and the interpretive. And you're taking away the intention of when this was set up to have that judicial review. So that's, I'm opposed to that, and so therefore I'll have to vote the whole ordinance down for that reason.
Can I add?
Yes, Counselor Jones?
I just want to add something to what Raleigh just said. Also, with this bypass, that was going to a special committee, those uses. Didn't we create a special committee for those
So there-
uses?
There is a licensing committee that was
Yes.
formed, yes. This does not bypass that committee. What this, my understanding of what this waiver would be is it would allow the planning board to waive items in the land development code that we instituted during the process of creating the social services and congregate living ordinance that protected the public from things like screening and that we, so in essence, if a person wanted to have an item from the land development code waived, they would need to go to the zoning board in order to get that waiver. But the planning board does not have the same criteria or expectation for review that the zoning board does, and is much more liberally willing to waive those criteria, which we put in place in order to, work with a compromise with the public during that whole ordinance process. So my personal feeling was, it was sort of circumventing the system. If you don't want those items in the land development code, take them out of the land development code. Don't just give a liberal body an ability to waive them when they see fit. If somebody wants something waived and it's for a good reason, let them go through the proper channels in order to do that. So, that's just a little clarification. I don't know if it helps you.
Can I ask you a
Yes.
question? So would it still include that licensing board or
Yes.
not?
Yes,
It
just
would.
to be clear about
Yep.
that. What would
Absolutely.
happen is, for new congregate living applications, they first have to go to the planning board to get the conditional use permit for that. Once the planning board acts, then it goes to the licensing board. So the licensing board would take whatever the planning board sort of delivered to it, along with all of the information that would be necessary from the applicant for the licensing board. So because the planning board gets the first sort of crack at the apple, the licensing board process still exists, but it would function under whatever constraints was provided to it by the planning board.
So it could be a three-step process, huh? Right, thank you.
So,
It could-
right now, it would, if an applicant was seeking relief from one of the criteria under the current regulations, it could be a three-step process. They would go to planning board, they would say, well, actually, they'd go to zoning first, ask for a variance, and then they would have to go to planning board to get the conditional use permit, then go to the licensing board to get the license. That's for new uses as.
Yeah, that's
as
why I
the
said three
attorney
steps.
Right, and then this would remove that third step, but yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else have any questions this time? All right, seeing none. Anyone from the public have any questions? Okay, so I think that what I'm hearing is that we would like to probably put a motion on the table that would ask the city council to send this back. So, Counselor.
The community development director has a
Has-
motion
has
prepared.
prepared a
If you-
motion?
You would move to recommend to refer ordinance O 2022-19A back to joint committee for further review and further recommendation to the city council.
Counselor Giacomo, do you think you could give us that motion?
I can't say so moved. All right. Yeah, move to recommend to, nope,
You have it there.
Yep, sure.
Thank you.
Well,
We're not,
didn't-
do you have it written down? I'm sorry.
I have it written down, but in.
I know,
chicken
I know
scratch, so
I know the premise, but I want to get the wording correct.
No,
so
I
that-
absolutely. I hand wrote it. I don't like printing extra paper out.
Good man.
Thank you.
Can you read that at
Wow,
all?
good
Yeah.
job. All right.
Could have been a doctor. I-
We'll move to recommend to refer the ordinance O 2022-19-A back to joint committee for further review and further recommendations to city council.
Second.
I have a motion by Counselor Giacomo, second by Counselor Jones. Any questions on that motion from anyone? And anyone from the public? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you, Jesse, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Getting through that.
And be prepared to get the same questions next Thursday.
Absolutely.
Oh, right.
So the last thing that we have this evening is an item that has been on more time on our agenda, but I believe that it's in a position to be brought forward. So unless there is any objection, I'm going to take the Taste of Keene Food Festival's request for license off from more time and make it our 5th agenda item this evening.
Madam Chairman, despite my earlier comments, because the city clerk apparently wants to make sure that this is processed right, there is that proposed motion on your, for
There
the
is?
suspension of the rules. Yes, you should.
Okay.
I would rather not have to deal with the city clerk and asking you why we don't follow it.
Why we circumvented her. Well, I would be open to, so there are a couple of ways this can happen. One of them is by suspending our rules in order to take it out for more time. So let's start with a motion for that.
We'll move to suspend Section 26 of the Rules of Order to act on the request from the Keene Young Professionals Network to host the 2023 Taste of Keene Food Festival.
Motion by Counselor Giacomo, second by Counselor Ormerod. So this is just a motion to suspend our rules. This is not talking about the item yet. Does anyone have any questions on that motion? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor? Do we have to roll call? Yes. This will be a roll call vote. Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Ormerod?
Yes.
And it's a yes for me. So, yes, we're dotting all of our i's tonight. This is why we need our city attorney at our meetings. So, then I'm gonna ask, I think we have Alana with us tonight from the Keene Young Professionals. If you wanna come forward to one of the microphones, state your name and address for the minute taker, and just let us know a little bit about where you guys are at.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Alana Fierro, 25 Roxbury Street in Keene, and I'm the president of the Keene Young Professionals Network. So I'm excited because we're on our way to hosting the 3rd annual Taste of Keene Food Festival on Saturday, June 3rd from 11:30 to 3:30, 11:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Similar format to last year with the street shut down in Central Square, part of Main Street and part of Roxbury, and then having a beer garden in the Hannah Grimes Center for Entrepreneurship. It was a great event last year, looking to have a similar turnout for this year, and we're well on our way, so open to any questions.
Does anyone have any questions from the committee? Counselor Giacomo?
Thank you. What, if any, changes are you guys looking to do as far as number of restaurants, number of breweries, et cetera?
Restaurants and breweries should be very similar. The one change we noticed is last year the beer garden was very crowded, so we're planning on taking the live music and putting it into Central Square so that there's more room for the beer tents in the beer garden and for people to move around, and we'll not be doing the chef demos and the hot pepper contest this year.
Oh, is there any sort of contest happening?
Not in the works, not planned so far.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. And am I correct, was the beer garden originally at behind Modest Man?
It's
No.
always been in the Hannah Grimes
It's always
parking
been
lot.
there.
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions? Counselor Jones?
Well, Alana, thank you for being here. And I don't even know if you know the history. This was kind of born out of the COVID Rebound Committee. And we were looking for something, and the young professionals stepped up and said, yeah, we'll sponsor that. So
Yes.
thank you very much for,
Yeah, it's been
for
great.
doing that. That was, and it worked. The process worked.
Better than we could have ever expected, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and what a great event to sort of like bring our city back alive. That first year, you know, I think that it was like, hey, we're back, where it's okay. And it was an outdoor event and people felt okay about that. So I think it's been nice to see it stand the test of time and lovely to have you guys back.
Thank you. We're happy to do it.
Good. Any other questions? Anyone from the public? Oh, staff, sure.
Thank you.
You're public
I'm public.
for tonight.
I'm Public Works.
That is true.
Kurt Blomquist, Public Works Director, Emergency Management Director. Correct, we've had several protocol meetings with the Young Professional Committee that's putting it on. What's before you this evening is what we minimally need to be able to get the permissions from the council to have the activity. We do have several more protocol meetings scheduled with them just to finalize some various pieces of the event. But again, we're looking forward to having it again this year.
Wonderful. So Not seeing any further questions at this point, I would ask for a motion. Counselor Jones?
I would move to recommend that the Keene Young Professionals Network be granted permission to use downtown city rights-of-way on Saturday, June 3rd, 2023, and reserving a rain date of Sunday, June 4th, 2023, in the event of inclement weather, to conduct a food festival conditioned upon the following: furnishing of a certificate of liability insurance in the amount of $1 million, naming the city of Keene as additional insured, the signing of a standard revocable license and indemnification agreement, the petitioner agrees to absorb the cost of city services over and above the amount of city funding allocated to the event, and agrees to remit payment within 30 days of the date of invoicing. That the footprint and layout of the event shall encumber the traveled portion of Central Square, Main Street, both sides from Central Square to Railroad Street and Gilboa Avenue, and portions of Railroad Street. Road closures may include any portion of other streets needed to facilitate detour routes. The full extent of road closures and detour routes shall be agreed upon with city staff. That the petitioner is permitted to place porta potties in city parking spaces located at the base of Washington Street from June 2, 2023 to Monday, June 5, 2023, which will be chained together and affixed to ensure that they are not vandalized while unattended overnight. That the actual event will be held from 11:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. with the time set up, with the times for setup and cleanup to be established with city staff. The free parking be granted under the provision of the free parking policy for city parking spaces on Washington Street needed for storage of equipment from Friday, June 2, 2023 to Monday, June 5, 2023, and the spaces within the event footprint on the day of the event. The submittal of signed letters of permission from any private property owners for the use of their property, and said permission is granted subject to obtainment of any necessary licenses or permits and compliance with all laws and compliance with any recommendations of city staff. Somebody please second.
Second.
Ooh, I think I was wrong, Counselor Johnson. That one might have been longer.
Yeah, it is a little longer.
So we have a motion by Counselor Jones, seconded by Counselor Giacomo. There was a lot of specifics in there. Do you have any questions about any of those items?
No, that all made sense. Thank you.
Okay, great. Anyone here have any questions about those items? Nothing? Okay, then I would ask for a vote. All in favor? Opposed? And that's unanimous.
Thank you so much.
All right, we'll see. This will go before council next week, but I think that there's a lot of support for this, so we'll hopefully see you back in June.
Thank you.
All right, so at 6:50, I'm going to call this meeting adjourned, and everybody can head home.